Serious? What is your most terrifying? We need to leave. Now. Random rush of fear you've felt. My car was stolen the very night I moved into my new house in a very good neighborhood. The neighbors had warned us that the neighborhood was being targeted at the time. They mentioned a woman around the corner that opened the door for knockers in the middle of the night and they attacked her and robbed her and almost killed her. We had reported the car stolen and did the police reports when it happened. Well, tonight's later in the middle of the night I hear a knock on the door and they said open up. It's the police. Well, since I had heard the story about the other lady, I was suspicious and did not answer. I grabbed my kids and put them in my daughter's room because it had access to the roof from the window. I called the police to say that two men claiming to be police are pounding on my door. They said there was no police in the area and they're sending a car. Turns out, these same guys stole the car and came back for seconds. I did get my car back because they brought it with. How nice of them. Hope they brought it back with a full tank of gas too. Years ago my BF owned a truck tire repair company. He stopped by a customer's house unannounced one day to try to get to check, as they owed a lot of money. When he came out of the house he was pretty shaken up. He explained the man's numerous other brothers were there, unusual. Everyone was very jittery but they cut him a check and then rushed him out. He had a scary feeling that day. 2 days later that customer and his brothers were arrested for a murder that they had committed the night before we stopped by. When I was hiking in the woods and I saw a baby bear, I slowly turned and walked quickly away from the bear because I'm not getting eaten. I had to drag my friend along with me because he didn't understand why we needed to return the way we came from. You won't get eaten. But mama will make sure you're good and dead. A baby bear is probably the most dangerous thing you can come across in the woods. Was riding my bike home from a friend's house when I was a young teen, over 20 years ago. We had both lost track of time so it was dusk when I left. Lived about a mile away. Was traveling down one of the last roads to get home when I had this weird feeling, so I turned around to look back down the road. Saw headlights pass, stop, back up and turn on the road I was on. It was a pretty long road without many houses and no streetlights or anything. As soon as they turned I bolted into the woods and hid pretty far in. The car slowly drove by and kept going. No idea what they were doing but I didn't want anything to do with it. Hurricane Florence a year ago. We planned to ride it out as we were on a hill and in an area where the winds wouldn't be bad. Mostly ignored the news, too. The night before, I got this huge pit of fear in my stomach and begged my dad for us to go stay with my sister a few hours inland. He fought with me about it but I finally convinced him. We came back a week later to find a tree fallen into our house, the house full of water. A tornado formed in the woods behind the house and pushed the tree up a 45-degree slope into our roof and through our house. Now, I will always trust my gut feeling, no matter how stupid it seems. I was walking in my old local park with my sister. We entered it at about 3 PM and were hanging around until at about 9:30 we saw 3 people all wearing somewhat similar outfits all the way on the other side of the park. I immediately noticed but don't think much of it. We walked for about 2 more minutes and I noticed one of them stopped and was staring at us. I immediately had a bad feeling and told my sister we should leave. She noticed and obliged. Later that night there was word of a stabbing in the park and the suspects were all the people we saw in the group of 3. I was camping with a friend in a backwoods camping area. Not very many sites and they were all super spaced out. We had already been there one night, had the site fully set up. We had been hiking all day, the works. We drove into town to get some food, and when we were driving back to our secluded campsite we passed a man walking out of the only road to our site. We both locked eyes with him and I got a super creeped out feeling. He stared at us like he knew us and hated us, but we had never seen him in our lives. When we got to our tent we went inside and everything we had in there was tossed. Our bags were dumped out and our clothes were thrown everywhere. We quickly realized both our hunting knives were gone, along with a bunch of our clothes. We also realized it had to be that guy we saw. There were no other sites or hiking paths he could have been walking from besides ours. We jumped in the car and drove back towards where we had seen him. He was gone. We drove a bit further and found a common area where other campers were gathered. We sprinted down and asked, Have any of you seen this guy and described him? The people at the gathering just stared at us and didn't speak, giving us an even more creeped out feeling. It was at that point that I told my friend we need to leave this place right now. Walking back to our car, we looked over the edge of a guardrail and saw all our stolen clothes in the woods. We gathered them up but didn't find either of our knives. Knowing this guy was still out there with those knives and that no one around us cared freaked us out so much, we packed the car up and ended our camping trip early. No way were we staying out in those woods one more night. Was once at summer camp and was walking to the beach. It's like a 5-minute walk from the cabins we were staying in, and the path to get there is made of sand and surrounded by trees. We were supposed to go in partners but mine dipped anyways. I was walking for probably about 2 minutes and I hear leaves crunching in the trees beside me, so I look over and what I see is none other than a brown bear cub lugging a tree. I think that everyone knows that where there's a cub, there's a mama. This bear starts making bear noises. I just about shat my pants and bolted out of there. Drinking at a bar with some mates in Sydney, 2 young guys walked past, and I happened to make eye contact. He flashed a gun at me and nodded towards the door. I didn't make him ask twice. I was walking by a long stretch of road with no houses. There was a cemetery. A van with 2 guys in it stopped to ask me if I needed a ride. This was in the late 90s, so it's not like hitchhiking was legal. I'm all, no thanks, I'm nearly home. They wouldn't budge. They kept following me with the windows down, kept saying come on, just get in. At some point, they just stop, and they start getting out. I was just a teen, and they were clearly 20 something. I just took off running. I must have sprinted half a mile to get to an alley, and hid by the nearest building near the road. I waited about 15 minutes before moving on to make sure they had given up, so they wouldn't follow me home. Thanks for watching Reddit now. Be sure to like and subscribe.